I want to start talking about cyber crises with rumors. This is a big chapter within Fern Banks, and I think it's probably one of my favorites because we're especially that how much it deals with things now of our society of fake news. And it was relatively recently about one piece of fake news in particular that took off that I just thought was interesting was um, when the Clemson football team won the college football national championship. They went to the White House, and this was during the government shutdown. So this was the big thing of having McDonald's and Taco Bell and all these different fast food restaurants. And there was something going around um, the meme that was going around on Twitter, on Facebook, and so forth of the quarterback, and I'm blanking on his name off the top of my head, said something to the effect of, we're not, people who wear bow ties, and I'm not looking for a fancy meal. We really appreciate what it was. I mean, we eat McDonald's all the time, and it was real kind of a real normal feeling. In other words, so this spreaded. This started spreading like wildfire all over the internet. Well, it turned out that he didn't say any of that. He went on his personal Twitter and said something to the effect of, look, we enjoyed our White House visit, but I never said any of those things. Which gets into where rumors get into place and where it can start and the effects it can have. I mean, we talked about the Jenny McCarthy autism thing in terms of these rumors, but they're based on opinions, guesses, assumptions that we have that may have some truth to them, may not have any truth at all. They may be outlandish and so forth. So when we get into this, we talk about like three unique problems with when you're trying to cope with a rumor. First, you have no idea how this rumor started. In many cases, we see these areas of the Tide Pod challenge, for instance, where we're talking about a college humor thing about how enticing they look, and so people started not eating. Well, they may have eaten. Where a few people started doing this challenge, and what occurred was predictably poisoning within their own mouth. We don't know how widespread the rumor is or how long it's been circulating. So this is the kind of thing that staying on top of things is very important. And we talked about this on Tuesday of making sure that we stay on top of things, especially when it comes to anything cyber related on social media, that if it's been circulating for a while, it's best not to ignore it, at least, and acknowledge what was going on. And you have to determine carefully to ignore or fight the rumor, because you're going to hear rumors about yourselves all the time. But we have to consider the brevity of it. We have to consider the circulation about it. We have to consider how long it's been there, how much salience has become strong and part of what's going on with this rumor here. And the nature of rumors is rumors are word of mouth and electronic communications. There's no verification of fact and no credible source. And it can be a negative or a positive rumor. I mean, they can be some good things about where people are praising you for something that you didn't do. And that's another thing. Do you just let that rumor go if it's positive? And we look into some areas where rumors come up, and it reminds me of a couple of examples. So, first one that comes up to mind is Procter and Gamble and their Satanism rumor. So, this was an interview on a late night television show about how Procter and Gamble was supposed to be contributing funds to a Satanism organization, as well as their logo had a hidden 666 in it, the mark of the devil, which if you look at their logo, they would say that this is just the quintessential man on the moon, or in the moon, excuse me. and it has no connection to Satanism whatsoever, but it did cause a lot of stir and outrage. This is the same thing with the organization with Dungeons and Dragons that connected to Satanism, because we get a lot of causality occurring that a young child killed somebody because of their involvement. Well, the rumor was it was because of his involvement with the game. The other one that comes to mind is the Snaps restaurant and the AIDS rumor. So Snaps was a fast food restaurant, and apparently one of the managers had AIDS. And so this was a claim that it contaminated all the meat that was being served, which they did a couple things in this case. First, they looked for the source of the rumor, which they never found. The managers were all tested for HIV/AIDS, which all came back negative, and they had a press conference. So they basically stated everything that was said was totally false. They had to do a big ad campaign as well as change their name. I don't remember what they called it, but they changed their name to keep their brand alive because the rumor had just gone so widespread. And that's a detrimental thing for things that have to be done, even though you did nothing wrong in this case. So there's a lot of types of rumors. Fernbranks talks about them. Things like intentional rumors, premature fact rumors, malicious rumors, outrageous rumors, nearly true rumors, etc. And they all have their categorization of why someone might be angry with you, might want to start something about you. I mean, I always think of the example of the burn book from Mean Girls, and how that really came into a plot of the movie. Especially, my favorite part was when Regina George in the film sabotaged herself to say somebody else wrote this horrible, malicious rumor about herself when it was her all along, and she played victim. And it does show a testament to the outlandishness of some of the rumors. And it's funny because when you go through the types of rumors, some of them actually ended up being relatively true within the burn book. Whereas some of them were, again, false claims in general. But then comes into how rumors spread. Establishing a rumor center and a rumor hotline, we need to think about detecting this. And one of the places we might look is through hashtags and so forth. And that's where a rumor center can be part of, especially if your organization has a prior negative reputation. This might be very important, is if your company already has this negative perception about you, you need to have that on call at any given point in time, because again, you don't know when these will start. It's good to train your representatives in rumor control. The problem with a lot of this, in being accused of something that you didn't do, is to overreact. And I'll talk about this a little bit more, but anytime you're dealing with this, whether it be outrageous or malicious, it's only natural for us to get extremely upset and kind of go off the handlebars, and that's never the way to be able to look at this, especially if your organization conduct rumor workshops prior will be very beneficial. Making sure that the company has strong, positive relationships, keep your employees informed, because that's another thing that goes on, is your personal Twitters can be a representation of the company as well. So you need to make sure that if there's a rumor spreading, that we have, again, we've talked about this a million times, that we mentality, and evaluate the extent of the rumor. Because again, if it's something that comes up, dies down, you don't need to exacerbate it by creating more salience towards it. And then fighting the rumor. First, you might want to disseminate to the publics. You might want to analyze it. You might want to do nothing, again, depending on the brevity of it. You might want to deny the rumor. You may want to get an outside expert. Place ads in high circulation areas. These all might be components of where we might decide that It may be not worth talking at all. We may have to put in a lot of money to expunge the rumor and making sure that people know that we are not guilty of whatever's being said. We may have to deny anything that's going on. Again, this goes back to our Taco Bell example that we've mentioned. And in the Taco Bell, they had to get an outside expert and place ads to make sure that this rumor was subsided and quick. And when we get into some of these social media rumors that have to be addressed, we do think of things like the Momo Challenge, for instance. This doesn't have anything to do with an organization, but it was something that was widespread and needed to be extinguished very quickly. If you don't remember, the Momo scare wasn't too terribly long ago, which basically talked about something going around of this child creature named Momo encouraging children to kill themselves, and there was a lot of uproar amongst parents who were worried about sharing this post and so forth, making a viral trend of it. And quickly, The Atlantic posted something to say, none of this is true. None of what's going on. This is all a hoax, and you shouldn't be paying attention to what's being said. And the problem is we go back to the availability heuristics. We talked about this in our theory section, where a lot of people don't use their research to find out that something's not true. That came up pretty quickly in terms of the Google search that I did with looking at the Momo Challenge, as well as the Clemson quarterback that I mentioned in the first part of classes. When I looked at the tweet of the Clemson quarterback, I said, what's his Twitter? And look it up. Snopes has become this big website of looking at rumors and claiming whether they're true or false, even to the point where they're saying they're partially true or partially false. And you can look that up. It is a quick search, but not a lot of people do. They want to see the meme and then go from there. And that can be a huge problem. For this in particular, in terms of responses, analyzing, and making sure that advertising was coming out, this was Kentucky Fried Chicken and KFC. Why is it named KFC? And the idea and the rumor behind it was that KFC wasn't actually serving chicken. It was like this mutant chicken, so they couldn't technically call it that. So the rumor was when they changed Kentucky Fried Chicken to KFC, they were supposed to be responding in such a fashion that they weren't actually serving chicken. That was the rumor, and that's totally false. It was actually because of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We have 4 Commonwealths in this country, and they were trademarking the name and capitalizing on various brands and products, which included things like the Kentucky Derby, as well as Kentucky Fried Chicken. And again, quick search will help you find this out pretty quickly in this particular case. For battling online rumors, though, Coacher in 1999 would mention that first and foremost, you got to think strategically. What is it about this rumor? How adamant is it? How outrageous is it? How malicious is it? First and foremost, you must respond. You have to respond, and especially when it comes to online. Extinguish it as quickly as possible. If that includes denying whatever it might be. The other thing is to speak with one voice. I like this one a lot because the conversation and the talk is, again, we might feel differently from person to person, but if we can speak with a united voice about a certain rumor going around, that makes it the easier to have any slight of doubt whether it's true or not. If we've got one voice denying everything, then there's no wiggle room. There's nobody that can disclaim it just because everybody has this same communication pattern. Communicate your concern. Let's say, look, this is bothering us. It's hurting us that we're having these issues, and we want to fix them because everybody's business is important to us in this particular case. adopting appropriate tones. Again, I said the palm wonderful. It depends on what you're doing it as. So if you're looking at the John Oliver case, they approached it with humor. Whereas in a lot of other cases, you need to approach it with a serious tone. And seize the opportunity. There's a term called kairos that means striking when the iron's hot. I talked about this with diffusions of innovation and making sure that when you are communicating this crisis, you make sure that you are finishing whatever it needs to be done at the right time versus something that's already become a meme and your company is already becoming known for. And this may have to be doing, in many cases, this would be the killer banana rumor, which basically meant that if you have 6 bananas a day, you might die from overpotassium, which is, again, as you can imagine, not true. I think I read in several cases that doctors were like, you could have 10 times as much of that, and that would be when it becomes a danger. But this is just simply not true, what's being stated. So availability heuristics come up in an audience perspective, but it's important to, in this particular case, get that outside opinion to go with this. We might also be dealing with what are called rogue websites, where consumers are unhappy with policies or performance. Consumers have negative feelings about a particular company. This was the True Stories About Disney. There was a video series that went along in terms of talking about what was it like to work at Disney in this case. And although I think Disney actually invited him back because he was actually being pretty open and honest, even though he had some negative things to say. Consumer creating humor pages. This is an actual conversation we've had within sports organizations, and we'll talk about sports towards the end of the semester, where people create joke pages, especially if your team is bad and losing or doing something really stupid. People will create these websites, and it will be strong rhetoric against you. And we've talked to social media managers in the past of how do you deal with fan-related content driven about your particular team. And many of them were saying, for the most part, we let them roll with it. If it's in good humor, we retweet them. We let them be part of the conversation. But it is a problem, and it is something that we have problems with, especially when it comes to, again, communicating something positive when the rest of your community seems to be pretty negative about it. And indexes created for complaints of multiple businesses. This happened a lot with the FTC when they were talking about net neutrality, and John Oliver putting that up there. Now, whether you liked him doing that or not is a different story, but there was a large index, and I think it's still available in terms of the complaints that were filed in there to really bring in this awareness of how people felt about net neutrality as a whole. And how do companies prevent rogue websites? Well, there is a federal anti-cyber squatting Consumer Protecting Act that was signed into law that helps with protecting some of these organizations if need be. And if that attack site comes up in this case, it all comes back to, again, what we do in terms of social media, which is don't overreact. Assess the issue, analyze the attack site, and drive the discussion. This is all about a conversation. This is all about being open and honest. We've talked about this already. A great deal of our conversation throughout this class is this idea of you need to be the one controlling the narrative. And this happens within those attack sites as well. Being open, being the driver in this particular case. So that goes in a lot of strong instances of how we mitigate the crisis as much as possible when we're dealing with attack sites or rumors or anything. So the moral of the story is there are going to be rumors that go around, and it's especially if you are in no ways in the wrong. Um, it is important to respond. However, how we respond, tone of response, um, these are all facets that need to be taken into consideration when you're looking at it. It is a case by case basis. I would encourage you to look up resources, not only the web organization or the law that I showed you earlier, but also look at some examples of how they handled it and what things have been said in the past to make sure that they can keep their reputation for what it is, because it is important. And it's terrible that a rumor, just because somebody doesn't like you, can create such a problem for your organization. So think of these, especially when it comes to social media, because that's what we talked about on Tuesday. But bring these into consideration when you are thinking about your Twitter or social media in general, about your posts. Think about them in terms of questions that may come up as trick questions that we've talked about as well. Rumors may start from that, and that may be the beginning of those trick questions, and you may not even be aware of them. So anyway, that's it for what I wanted to talk about today. Again, keep on track with your Appalachia. Email me with any questions you have, and I hope you have a great day.